So it is very early Sunday morning while I'm filming this video, as in like midnight. I just finished watching AEW Wrestle Dream on pay-per-view. Gotta be honest, didn't really care for it. Like, it was fine. There were some good matches, but I don't know. It just kind of felt flat with me. But maybe you enjoyed it, so let me know in the comments down below. But we're not here to talk about wrestling. We're here to talk about hackers, data breachers, getting information and then spreading it out there into the world. Now, of course, I never say that these hackers are good people, because they're not. You know, they're getting into private information, things that shouldn't be out there. But once that information becomes public information and everyone starts talking about it, then yeah, sure, I'll talk about it as well. We've seen it with other video game companies, Nvidia, Insomniac. It seems like it happens more often than it probably should, but you don't really hear about Nintendo or Nintendo-related companies being involved in these sorts of things until now, because the Pokemon Company got hit with quite a large data breach, and this information is now out in the public, so I'm going to comment on it. Kids, don't hack into things. Don't be like these people, because it's not going to end up well for you. But if the information's out there, we might as well talk about it. And the reason I want to talk about it is not because I'm the king of Pokemon YouTube, which sometimes I am, but there is some Nintendo Switch 2 related stuff in here that I did find to be pretty interesting. So if this is your first time on the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Without any further ado, let's talk about the current information that is out there from this data breach, because I don't know, there could be more information by the time this video goes up. So we're going to start things off with the thing I care the least about. The source code and some beta builds for Pokemon Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Black 2, and White 2 were leaked. Okay, like I don't necessarily care about that. You know, it doesn't really do anything for me. If it was a game that I was interested in, then yeah, you know, it could be a little bit more interesting to see these beta builds and see what has changed over time. You know, WWF No Mercy, some beta builds got out pretty recently for that game, so that was kind of cool to see, like, different faces that they used for characters and stuff like that. But for me, you know, I don't really care about this. I guess the one thing that you could kind of potentially take away is, if the source code is out there, people can reverse engineer it to run natively on the PC, kind of like you see with N64 games. That, you know, happens from time to time when the source code gets out there. So that could be kind of interesting, but it doesn't really mean much to me. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about that's Nintendo Switch 2 related is the alleged name, the code name for this system. And, you know, code names definitely change. And, you know, you look at something like the Revolution, that ended up becoming the Wii. So you can't really take away too much from it. But I do kind of find it interesting because, you know, at least some of these code names kind of make sense. You know, if you go back and look through the history, the annals of Nintendo history, if you will, you'll see different code names for systems. But allegedly, the code name of the Nintendo Switch 2 that is being used internally is ounces. Like an ounce. Like a measurement. Like when you go to Dude Man's house and you got to knock 3 times, and that means you want an ounce, and then he opens the door and, you know, he daps you up, and then you go on your way and you got your ounce. Like, that's just such a strange name to me. This was found in the documents relating to the Nintendo Switch successor. I don't think the system is going to be called the Nintendo Ounce or anything like that, but it's weird. You know, I can't really say much beyond that. I just find it to be very, very strange. Now, what else is strange is that there is a game that is allegedly being worked on that doesn't sound like any sort of traditional Pokemon game that we've ever experienced before. It is called Codename Synapse. It is allegedly a battle-focused game that is a multiplayer game being jointly developed by Game Freak and ILCA. Leakers have said that it's a Splatoon-like game. So a battle-focused multiplayer game being done by Game Freak, that kind of sounds weird. I would assume that this is a new IP that's not related to Pokemon, but a Splatoon-style game being done by Game Freak for what we assume to be Nintendo platforms, why would you try to compete with Splatoon? You know, is that trying to capture lightning in a bottle? Kind of like one of the things we talked about yesterday on the channel with these companies trying to chase trends. I guess Game Freak could potentially see it as something that could be heavily monetized. Maybe it's a free to start game or a free to play game with cosmetic skins and stuff like that. You know, not a whole lot of information is out there, but like I said, leakers that have this information have said that it is kind of Splatoon like. So I don't know. That's kind of weird to me. I can't really think of like what style of game it would be if it is Splatoon like. I mean, you did see Foam Stars, and there definitely was some inspiration done by Splatoon from that. But you know, Game Freak does occasionally do smaller style games or kind of weird, quirky games, like Little Town, I think it was called. You know, that was a game, wasn't it? It did look good. You know, it was a good looking game. The next thing we want to talk about is something that could be potentially related to the Nintendo Switch Online playtest that is starting next week. Of course, there's a lot of mystery around that. I made a couple videos talking about it, but one thing I decided in my last video on it was I don't really think it's a streaming client like I kind of initially thought it might be because of the file size. Coming in at 2.2 gigabytes, that's more of something like a game size, more so than something that you would just have as a streaming client to stream games onto your Nintendo Switch. We do know that this has been around in Japan from third-party developers, but Nintendo themselves have never done it. But I thought that was a possibility with this thing. But maybe it's this. Because according to CentroLeaks, which is one of the websites that has, or Twitter accounts, I should say, I think they have a website too that has been covering this, there is a new Pokemon MMO game under consideration, and there's a file labeled MMO_test being uncovered during this breach. MMO_test. Now, that could be an internal test of this Pokemon related MMO that they are allegedly trying to do. Or maybe this is further along in development than the data breach kind of realizes. Maybe this was in a separate section of the data, or it's data that hasn't been necessarily uncovered yet within this. And maybe this is what's happening with this playtest that Nintendo is doing for Nintendo Switch Online members. Obviously, you would have to have a Nintendo Switch Online account in order to play this game. So I don't know. It's just something I'm throwing out there. This could be something that is just under consideration. But if there is a test file, then at the very least, it was an internal test that was done for this game. A Pokemon MMO? I mean, that kind of makes sense. You know, that's something you could easily monetize, easily keep alive for many, many years, drip feeding all the different Pokemans you've covered, you've created, I should say, over the past, 2+ decades now of Pokemon stuff. Hell, almost we're getting kind of close to 3 decades here, people. God, I'm getting old. But yeah, like I think there's a lot you could do with that, and that would be something that would be a bit fresh. The final thing we're going to talk about is a confirmed Nintendo Switch 2 game, and it's a Pokemon game. So the Pokemon Gen 10 is being referred to as Gaia. It's being developed for both the Nintendo Switch and the Nintendo Switch 2. And there are 2 versions names of the games, one being a K and one being an N. I want you to think about that for a second. So this is a Gen 10 Pokemon game being developed for 2 different systems that has 2 different versions. This is confirmed. We know this. So the next mainline Pokemon game is going to be a cross-generational game, but with 2 separate versions. And that kind of makes sense, but in reality, that would mean that there's technically 4 versions of the game. 1 version on the Nintendo Switch that has 2 versions, and 1 version on the Nintendo Switch 2 successor, Nintendo Ounce, if that's what you want to call it, that also has 2 versions of the game. And Pokemon collectors, I feel like will want all 4 of these versions, especially because Game Freak could do something very, very funny with this. If this game is being co-developed for both systems, you could have Pokemon that are exclusive to the Switch 2 version of the game as a way to be like, hey, you could still play the game on the standard Nintendo Switch. no problem. But if you want to upgrade to the Nintendo Switch 2 version of the game, meaning that you've bought the new system as well, then you get some additional Pokemon within this. Like, they could do something, and I'm not saying that they should do this because I think it's completely scummy and ridiculous. But thinking about how Game Freak works, they could do one of the biggest FUs to consumers that they've ever done. And they have done quite a few. And the funny thing is, it would still sell like crack cocaine. You know, we'd be going back to the knock 3 times for the ounce. You know what I'm saying? Like, it all is relevant. I don't know if they'll do that. I don't know if Nintendo will let them do that. But that does seem like a way to get people to want to upgrade to this new hardware. I mean, when you look at, you know, hardware is selling, but it's not selling quite at the rate that I feel like a lot of these companies expected it to. You know, a lot of people are still playing on PlayStation 4 instead of upgrading to a PlayStation 5. Could the Nintendo Switch see a similar thing? You still have your Fortnite on the Nintendo Switch, you have your Minecraft on Nintendo Switch, and now you have your Pokemon on there as well. But if the new game that comes out for the successor system has a couple little bells and whistles and maybe some additional Pokemon that are only in that version of the game, oh man, that would be a funny day on the internet. But that is what has come out from these leaks thus far. I used My Nintendo News' little write-up of it, so shout outs to them. I'll have a link to it in the description box down below if you want to read pretty much what I just read off from this sort of stuff. I'm sure we'll get some more information as people dig deeper into the files as well, but I want to know what you guys have to think about this. Does any of this pique your interest, you know, tickle your fancy or anything like that? And if not, thanks for watching to the end of the video anyways. I sincerely appreciate it. Go watch yesterday's video. I didn't look at the views on it. I just wanted to make it, so I made it. And of course, guys, thank you for watching this video. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Be sure to like, comment, and share. Buy the Art of N64 Games wrestling book as well. I'm showing a lot of stuff right now. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.